Hey, what's up everybody? So, I'm back with another video. Before I get started, make sure you click that like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. It helps the channel, helps get these videos out to people who it could be beneficial to. Well, it's winter time, so you know what that means. That means safety, safety, safety. Look, no freight is worth yours or my life. So at the end of the day, it'll get there when it gets there. Just make sure that you all are being safe out there on the road. Well, today's video is about running your business. So I started training and I have my student in the truck with me now. And one of the things that I'm really focusing on is not just how to drive the truck, but also how to run the business. So ultimately, my goal is to make sure that my students are able to run my business just like I do. So when they start their own, they're able to be lucrative in their own ventures. So I'm actually in the process of working on an Excel sheet where you can list your miles in it as well as how much you're spending on gas, and it will automatically calculate how much you're spending as far as your miles per gallon and things like that. And that's very beneficial for really being able to figure out how much money you're spending on fuel based on how many miles you're running. You can do it based on a week, the month, the year. I'm gonna have the Excel set up where you can list as many trips as you want, so that way it can automatically calculate that and you can get a general idea based on how you run. I think a lot about how much I'm spending on fuel. So when I'm doing my trip planning, one of the things I'm constantly doing is Prime has a system where we can submit a request for the best fuel based on the trip we're going, but it's not always exactly accurate. So what I mean by that is it doesn't know the way that I want to choose to drive. It just knows that this is my destination, and based on that destination and what it thinks is the best route, these are the locations it thinks that I should fuel at, because these places have better base prices in the end. And that's good, but you kind of have to think about the fact that you may be doing a lot of climbing, you may want to avoid certain roads and things like that. So throughout my entire trip, I'm actually looking at fuel prices throughout my entire trip. So I do it in the very beginning. Anytime I stop to fuel, use the restroom or anything like that, I start looking again to see if there are any better fuel prices. Even actually when I get to my fuel stop, before I fuel up, sometimes I'll look to see if maybe a little further down the road I can actually find a better fuel price, and then I'll actually travel there and fill up there instead. So there's a lot of different variables that you have to take into account when you're running your business. Also, how you're burning your fuel. So one of the tricks that I personally use, this works for me, it may work for you, it may not, but if it does, good for you. I reset trip 1 and 2 at the beginning of every single load that I get. And what I do is I leave 1 set from the very beginning after I reset it. And number 2, anytime that I have a new leg, so let's say I run 500 miles and then I shut down, or I have a multi-stop load and I stop at a certain location, or even if I'm just taking a break, I will consistently reset number 2. So that way I can actually see what my miles per gallon are during that particular leg. And what that does for me is it allows for me to, as I'm driving and based on my weight and where I'm at, I can see if my miles per gallon are starting to go down. And if they're starting to go down, I will adjust my speed accordingly. So I will slow down and speed up based upon that in order to keep myself in a certain range. Now, there are going to be times that you're just heavy and you're doing climbing and you're going to have low miles per gallon. However, you can still prevent it from being 5 and 6, and you can keep it up to 7 by still utilizing the same technique. it works really well for me. So far, it has been very beneficial. I recently took a tax business course where we actually looked at my miles per gallon based on how I've been running, and I'm doing actually really well, and I'm pretty much on target for how the business is supposed to be run based on Prime standards. So that's actually really good. And if you work specifically for Prime, you can ultimately, if you run it a certain way, if you run your business a certain way, you burn your fuel appropriately, you purchase your fuel appropriately, and you're being very mindful of these things, you could eventually start making a profit off of your money that you get for fueling. So I'm right at the corner of being able to do that. So I need to adjust some things. So personally, one of the things that I was doing, which is not necessarily a bad habit, but it's something that I'm going to change, which is if I'm empty and I'm headed somewhere, I'm empty so I can obviously drive faster and still get good fuel economy. But if I'm not in a rush, what's the point in me driving 65? I'm not in a rush. I got more than enough time to get there. So I could run 65 and get, say, 9.3 miles per gallon, or I can run 60 and get 9.8 for however long the distance is. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of things like that. I have a few other topics that I'm going to bring up over time as I continue to bring out more videos. Now that I'm actually back and running and I have a student in the truck, it's going to give me the opportunity to actually engage with my student, not only about things that they're wanting to know, but things that that don't necessarily get talked about. And by going back and forth with the students, it'll help me generate additional content and bring up some answers for questions that you may have that I wouldn't have thought of myself. Well, anyways, y'all stay safe out there, especially if you guys are driving east and west on like I-80, I-70. You know, for the last couple of days, there's been snow on the ground. There were a couple of winter warnings, so you had some winds that were up to like 35 miles per hour, which is not too bad, especially if you're heavy. But my personal trainer that I spoke with him recently, and he was out on I-80 just a couple of days ago, and he was getting hit with like 80 plus mile an hour winds. So please, everybody, be safe, drive safely, be alert, pay attention to everything that's going on around you, and get where you're going safe. Catch you later. Peace.